up with the camera here? It's gonna be weird. It's fine. Is lighting? In like 3 seconds. I guess it's a little bit better. Gotta fidget with the lighting at first. Where's my other shoe? Got to figure lighting first. Well, I know that the mic's on. Ah! This is how you do it, guys. This is exactly how you do everything in life. Wait to figure out that something's wrong and then fix it. That's better. So good. Oh, yeah, we got some people. We got some friends. It's great. We're doing it, guys. We're doing it. Okay. So before we fully get into it, as per usual, I just want to hop in, do a couple chatums. I just left this cord here. I didn't end up using it to see it because if the audio was actually on because it was ringing through my phone. And then I just left. I'm great. I'm great at life. And now I've turned the mic off. Okay. Doing it. Progress. It's great. So we're just going to have some small chatums. First and foremost, I'm sorry. There's a weird, really obnoxious ringing going on around this apartment complex. I don't know what it is. I'm not even sure if you guys can hear it through the mic, but it's getting to me. So I'm sorry if you can hear it, first of all. I'm also sorry if I react to it more than once in this video. I apologize. It's been going on literally all morning, and it's getting to me. I also am covered in fur and makeup that fell because I'm not great at doing makeup, but it's fine. We're doing great. Other major things, I did stop doing the desk side minis. So desk side minis over on the Instagram was essentially this, but shorter bits. I did 4 videos or something like that, where I would discuss the book as I was reading it, be a little bit more specific. But I found that in the time that I'm doing the live stream, I have plenty of time to go over all of those specific things that I wanted to discuss in the mini bite-sized ones. And so it ended up just being kind of redundant both ways. So we're just sticking to the live stream right now. If anyone's going to be super sad about it, we'll look into something else, figure something else out. But for right now, we're just sticking with the live stream. Anything else super important? My books. I'm not sure if you follow my books and my writing processes and whatnot, but I'm currently working on a book series. Just sent the first book of that series out to a handful of people to beta read. I have a couple more people specifically that I want to ask, and then I think tomorrow I'm probably going to just release the opportunity to a general beta reading group in Facebook. See if I can get more people to read it, give me notes. Super excited to see if people like it or not. Also super stressed. It's there's a moment up until while I was just editing it, I was so excited. I was so proud of myself. I thought I was doing great. And then I actually sent it to people, and immediately the second I hit send, it was oh my God, I'm a terrible writer. People are gonna read this, they're gonna hate this, they're gonna think I'm the worst. It's been a time. But that's been all of that. It's not what you're here for. You are here because of my awesome thumbnail. Love it. I have nothing Marvel based in no physical Marvel things in my house. So I ended up just using a plate to try and mock Captain America's shield. It's fine. I could have drawn it. I have a whiteboard here. I have paper. I have so many colored pencils and marker. I could have drawn it. That's just coming to me now. It's fine. We have what we have. It's adorable. We're doing that. So we are talking about Civil War, the actual comic, not the movie. And I stress this because there is a lot of differences. We will talk about some specifically. Primarily, I don't want to essentially turn this into a full comparison video, but there are some major things that I feel there need to be talked about specifically because just there's one that I'm probably going to talk about for a solid amount of time because just the concept of it is so interesting and the way they go about it is like, I have so much that I can say about it, so we're gonna do that. But I'm not doing like a full like shot for shot comparison. Although I will say, like, people made a big deal about the fact that there was that one scene in the movie where you have like Cap using a shield up against Iron Man's like blast. I'm adorable. And they're like, oh my god, that's the same in the comic books. I read the comic. I looked through the whole comic. Maybe because there's also in Civil War is like an overarching title for so many comics. Like, there's a Civil War Spider-Man, there's a Civil War X-Men, there's so many Civil Wars. I read the like general one that covers the basic storyline. And like in that one, you get that image, but it's in like the kind of like the cover for an issue. It's not really in the actual comic. You also see like Wolverine is literally advertised on every other like issue page. He's advertised throughout this entire comic so much. He's not in it. He does not participate in the Civil War. Super frustrating. False advertising, fake news, stop. But anyway, so I read the very general basic storyline of it. There's more specific ones that deal with more specific issues and like the specific regions of the Marvel universe and how they're reacting to it, but I read just a basic general comic, the first comic that had like this general overall idea. And so what happens is at the very beginning of the comic, you have this group of Young Avengers. They're called the Young Avengers. They're on their reality show. And they're saying like, oh my god, we're losing views since we lost this one chick. I think it was Nova. And they're like, hey, there's like this group over there of like super intense villains. Like, they used to fight Spider-Man and stuff like that. Let's go. If we can attack them, we'll get all of our ratings up. And so they end up doing that. They attack these supervillains that are way more advanced than they are. And it ends up getting to a fight. The fight ends up by a school. And the villain who has the ability, I think specifically his ability is for every like amount of damage that he gets, internalizes, he can then like produce that much energy outwards. But even if that's not the case, he himself made a big explosion, a big boom boom, and it killed, I think it was 800 to 900 people in that school. And that is what triggers this conversation of like, how do we handle superheroes? There is this woman, this is something two things I specifically want to notate. One is the fact that this is an issue that is only happening in the United States. It's not nationwide. You, in fact, see some people who leave to Canada so they can avoid the outcomes and what's going on with the situation. It's just happening in the United States. The second is that we have Tony Stark going to the funeral for the people who died in this incident, and he gets cussed out by this mother of one of the victims. And that essentially is, as far as I've seen in this comic, because again, this is really one of the first few Marvel comics I've ever read. I think this honestly might be the only Marvel comic I've read. As far as this comic has shown, that is the only reason why Tony is on the side of the government. Because the mother's like, you guys are out of line. You're doing whatever you want to do. She even says, like, you guys are trying to live above the law just because you're wearing like a tights, which they're not really doing anything illegal. They're fighting crime. But she's like, you try to live above the law, and that pushes him to then say, like, I want to help her. I want to hear her out, and I want to do right by her and other people that were hurt in this situation. So I'm going to do as they wish and take side with the government. But anytime anything major happens throughout this comic and throughout this story, it is, again, you see this mother in Tony's ear encouraging him to keep going along that one path. So it really seems like that is the only reason why he's actually a part of the side with the government. It's because this woman is constantly telling him, constantly blaming him for what happened, and he doesn't know how else to handle it but do the thing that they want. And so, yeah, you have them. Captain America's like, no, I'm not going to do that, because the government wants all superheroes to be registered with the government, and either you are working for the government and you are under their control, or you go to jail. That is the situation that they're under right now. And so you do have like a big split of sides. The big split of sides, Captain America and all of his other heroes, they go underground and they're fighting crime quietly underground. You have Tony, whose major focus is trying to like jail. They're like fighting crime, but they have a major focus of trying to put in jail all these superheroes who are not working for the government. And you also have Spider-Man is one of the major ones. He starts out by working on the side of the government with Tony Stark because they're like close friends, they're best buddies, they're like this, they like this. And then you have the Fantastic Four play a very major role in this, in that you have all of them starting out on the government side. Reed Richards is so into this side, and he's so into everything that they're doing with the government. He's obsessed. He's actually a dick. He is such a dick in this show, in this comic. He is the worst human being. I cannot stand him. He deserves worse than what he actually gets in this. It's so frustrating. But there's a point where like the Fantastic Four are working for the government to try and solve it that way. And they're also, as we're trying to pull out sides, divide sides, you do see them reach out to some other people. And that's why I specified that this is only in the United States, because they do reach out to T'Challa and Storm, who are at this point in time married and running Wakanda. And they're like, I'm not trying to get involved in the United States issues right now. We have our own stuff to worry about. I'm not trying to get involved in your stuff. They also go underwater to Namor to see if he would help. And he's like, I don't care. You guys are the worst. You guys have never done anything to help the ocean, help my people. So why am I going to help you guys now? Major turning point is we find out, I didn't know this, but at this point in time, Thor has died. Thor, the god of thunder, has died. They're in the first major fight between both sides. And it turns out Reed Richards, along with Hank Pym from Ant-Man and the Wasp, he is currently Ant-Man. Hank Pym they have worked together to clone Thor, but this Thor does not have a lot of like the emotive kind of situations in his head, so he doesn't understand necessarily what it means when you like hurt someone, when you kill someone, anything like that. He does not have the memories, relationships they have with these other people. And so that Thor comes in and he is brutally attacking everyone, to the point where he ends up killing Goliath, who is like a super OG superhero. He has a relationship with literally everyone, and that shatters this entire situation. You have people switching sides regularly. Spider-Man switches to the Captain America side. You have some other heroes who go over to Tony's side because they just don't want to die. You have then the people who actually, in fact, all of the people who were outside of the country and who reside outside of the country, they all end up joining Captain America's side as they feel guilty. Had they actually been involved to begin with, they would have been able to help prevent Goliath's death. And they feel blame. They feel like that's on them. Namor ends up joining because, like, Sue Storm switches sides. She's livid with Reed because, again, that was a friend of theirs, and he is to blame for him dying. She's livid. She leaves. Johnny joins her, and they send Sue as a person on the Captain America side to approach Namor, and that's how we get him into the story initially. And there's some sort of romantic history there they're talking about. It's a whole thing, and that ends up bringing, like, at first he rejects it, but then he ends up deciding he wants to bring in the troops, and they fight for a while. They're fighting, and like there's a massive fight at the end where everything was essentially set up. They found out Tigra, who was on Captain America's side, they already knew she was a spy, so they were planning for her to betray them. And then Hulkling, who is a shapeshifter, he's half Skrull. He's a shapeshifter. He was impersonating Hank Pym for a while, so he knew all of the things they were doing. He had control over all of the clones they were making. And so everyone's planned and ready for this massive fight they're about to have. They have it at the end, and it gets to a point where Captain America decides that he's going to surrender. He gives up because there's a point where all of these civilians are like attacking him, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "What are you doing? I'm trying to help you." And they're like, "Yeah, right." And he looks around, and he's like, "Oh, all of this area is destroyed. I'm not really helping anybody." So he decides to surrender and give himself up. And I kind of disagree with that, except I understand this specific fight. It seemed like everyone was planning to have a fight. Everyone was getting ready and prepping for this like sneak attack that they were going to do against each other, and these two teams were specifically trying to attack each other. And in that, yes, I can see like you're not helping. You're not necessarily helping. You guys are all massively powered, so you are going to cause a lot of destruction. The issue is, in general, their superhero activities is like, hey, this person's going to just slaughter and murder a bunch of others. I'm going to step in and help because I have the ability to do that. In that case, I do not think that they are in any way bad for doing that. I'm not sure. If you saw the Death Side minis that I did have on this, you would know how very partial I am to Captain America's side. I don't know. It bothers me, especially how it is portrayed in this comic, and so we can get into some of that now. It's really racist. Like, it is very, very racist. Let me explain that. So they're again just kind of lumping all people with superhuman powers into one group, and all of them are being blamed for what happened, and they're all being blamed for dangers that arise out of, like, collateral damages. They're all being blamed for that. And my issue is this. First of all, like, they're constantly complaining, like, hey, I'm sick of teenagers blowing up schools, and that alone I feel like should cue you into the fact that this situation is very much different. I agree that some young kids should not have like a reality show that they're obviously going to try and show off for. That's just any person would do that. If you have like a reality show that's essentially supposed to be like, oh, look how cool we are, we're saving the day, we're doing all these awesome things, you're going to want to show off for something like that. That's just ego. That's a child. I do not think the issue, like, seeing that, I do not think that situation is in any way similar to, like, hey, this guy's going to blow up half of the United States. I can do something about that, but it might, like, take down a couple buildings in the process. Those two are not the same. They really are not. It's frustrating how I'm not sure, especially because I know, particularly with X-Men, I've said that especially like 80 times in this. I'm so sorry. But I know in X-Men, the purpose of the X-Men, you have Xavier and you have Magneto, those two schools, and they represent racism and how the two major groups, black philosophy dissolved into when trying to figure out how to handle systemic racism. And you have Martin Luther King in Xavier's school, and you have Malcolm X in Magneto's school. So I know it's something that they have worked with. I know it's something Marvel has done and is not afraid to approach, but I'm not sure. I can't tell if that's the intention with this, or if they actually think, I don't know if it is intended to be as racist as it comes off. Because you do have like Johnny Storm. This is another issue. This is also part of the reason why, like, I think Reed is a dick. So Johnny Storm was just he and Fantastic Four just got back to the planet, and he's trying to go to a club with a girl, and he gets jumped by a bunch of people who are like, fuck superheroes suck. And so he gets jumped and he is sent to the hospital. He has to be hospitalized because they're like, oh, superheroes, this is your fault. You're a superhero. This is your fault. That is, like, I'm not sure if it would be racism, but if we consider superheroes and superhuman people a race, then it is racism. It is racist to say, oh, you're a superhero, so everything any other superhero does is your fault as well. And I don't think that the people involved in the story are being allowed to understand how that is coming off in that way. Like, I don't think that the government understands that they are, and in fact, like, advancing and supporting mass racism throughout the country this way. I also notice there are people who are saying, like, hey, if you have to register weapons, why not register powers? And this line specifically reminded me of the story Harrison Bergeron. Harrison Bergeron, you live in the future where everyone that doesn't work with the government has to wear these handicaps where, like, you have to, if you're smart, you have a thing in your ears that'll send, like, a massive, like, kind of, it's just a noise. It's a very obnoxious, very loud, very disruptive noise that goes into your ear, and it's supposed to disrupt your thoughts so you can't really think more than other people do. If you're pretty, you have to wear a mask. If you're a very good dancer, you have to wear really heavy weights around your ankles so everyone can be equal in this way. But the issue is people are different. People aren't equal in this way. That's like, to me, saying, hey, like, you have superpowers, why aren't they registered with the government? Why aren't you working with the government? That's like saying, hey, you're 6 foot and you're super strong. Why aren't you a basketball player? Why aren't you a firefighter? Why aren't you a policeman? Something like that. Because everyone, the superpowers are just excessive traits and advanced extreme traits that these people have that they live with and that they exist with, but it's being treated as if it's something that they can just not do. Yes, a lot of people have control over these powers, just as you can have control over whether you're going to punch someone with your full strength or whether or not you're just going to, you have control over that. But it's different to say, hey, learn how to control your powers and the abilities and the gifts that you have. And hey, you either need to have someone who does not understand you at all, completely control you in every single way, shape, or form, or you are a criminal. You are a criminal for being who you are. And that is the most frustrating part to me, is because, like, imagine if they said, hey, all Black people need to bleach skin, need to lose all of their muscle mass. They can never work out. They can never have that muscle mass. It's frustrating. Do you understand where I'm coming from with this and saying, hey, this is super racist, and it's shown throughout the entirety of the story. The fact that they are blaming every single superhero for this one incident that was obviously a problem. That's genuinely how we have a lot of issues now. There recently was a boy who was trying to show off a gun on Instagram or whatnot, and ended up, I'm not sure if it was intentional. I believe it was a misfire, and the gun went off and it killed him on Instagram Live because he was trying to show it off to a bunch of people because he had that platform to try and make himself to try and show himself off for, because that's what people do when you do have some means of trying to, like, put yourself out there in the best light. That's what all social media is. Maybe that's why I have such a big issue with it, is because I live around this kind of thing so much. In the world that we have now, we all have so much access to just the ability to show ourselves in whatever light we feel like it. We can show off, we can do stupid stuff, we can do crazy stuff, and sometimes it's dangerous. That's why a lot of people are asking for regulations, asking for different issues. That's why a lot of people are attacking these social media sites for, like, hey, why can I not report this? Why do I report this and nothing actually happens? And that's dangerous. This kid should not be doing it, and they should not be encouraged to do it. It's a world that I live around. It is a world and issues that I'm regularly dealing with and interacting with, and maybe seeing that not so obviously understood in this comment, and seeing that because it's not understood, trigger a much bigger issue than anyone in this comic is really able to recognize, except for the X-Men, but I'll get back to that in a second. is just, that's frustrating, seeing no one's able to recognize the issue that they're causing, or the fact that it's going to be a much bigger issue, and it's causing a much bigger issue systemically. But back to the X-Men. So the X-Men, in fact, were, when they went over to the X-Men to talk to them, I believe it was the X-Men. I don't think it was the Inhumans. I think it was the X-Men. Inhumans are with them already. But they went over to talk to the X-Men and asked, like, hey, would you like to help us? And the X-Men are like, no, this isn't our fight. They said if we stay on Xavier's school, we're fine. So we're not dealing with this. And they're like, why not? It's like, it's not our, like, we've been through this. We as X-Men have been through the situation of, hey, they want to, like, people are judging us and people are attacking us specifically for who we are, because, again, X-Men was the story of racism. So, like, they're like, we know it. We've been through it before. It's not new to us. Just because it's new to you and it's a big deal to you and it's such a massive new change to you does not mean it's new to us. And so maybe they do recognize the bigger issue, the systemic issue that is being caused by this comic. I'm very interested in seeing what happens later, especially, I know I said I wasn't going to talk much about the movies, but I'm also very interested in seeing how the Sokovia Accords are actually going to come across in the future of Marvel, because those are still a thing. Those still exist, and half of the X-Men, or not X-Men, half of the superheroes that saved the world from Thanos are still felons. So I'm curious. I'm very curious to see how that turns out. It's been real fun. But yeah, the other issue I had with Reed Richards was, like, he's going off around the world trying to recruit more people. He was the one who tried to recruit T'Challa for the government side. And T'Challa's like, hey, I heard about Johnny getting jumped. How is he? And his literal response was, I don't know. Like, I'm sure if he had died, Sue would let me know. So he's probably fine. How are you so... I'm not sure if it's self-absorbed, if he's just super absorbed in his work, or if he's just an idiot to, like, that's your reaction to your brother-in-law being assaulted and brutalized and hospitalized. It's like, if he was dead, I'm sure I would know. Reed, why? Really, the last thing that I have to say about this is there's only one thing that I agree with the government side on, and their main goal in all of this is to have 50 different superhero groups in every single state, so that way all of this superhero nonsense and all of this massive damage and destruction is not contained just in New York. And that I have to agree with. Yeah, New York's a big place, but if you saw, like, all of the characters that are in this story, you do have, like, X-Men, and the X-Men aren't really that a part of it, but you have some X-Men, you have all of these, just so many people. There's so many people involved, and it's all in New York. Really, the only people who aren't in New York that we see in the comics are, like, it's just T'Challa, Storm, because they're in Africa right now, Namor, because he's under the ocean. That's basically it. So you have them, like, there's a lot of stuff going down in New York. Also, side note, I forgot to mention this. It doesn't really come into contact, aside from it kind of makes Cap angry, but the government does, all the supervillains that they capture, they put, like, a dog collar on, the same way they do in Suicide Squad, except it's not an explosion. It's just, like, electricity. It's just intense amounts of voltage. They put a dog collar on them, and they use them as well for these, like, adventures. They specifically send them out against Spider-Man, and that kind of makes Cap angry. But yeah, like, all of these people are just in New York. The people of New York must be so traumatized. Just, it's ridiculous the amount of just carnage and destruction and violence that happens just in that city. Now at least spread it out. You even got some of the villains. You threw some of them in another place. We'll see how that goes. It's changed. Things are changing. That's the only thing I can agree with them about. So yeah, I am curious as to what other people think about the situation. Think about the government's going about it. I personally am on Cap's side with this. I was also on Cap's side when they did the movie for the Sokovia Accords. I was there as well, specifically because I think the issue is it should not be. I think the issue is with this specific because it's people you're talking about. You're talking about people controlling their own capabilities and the things that they can do. It should not be left to the government, like, to decide, hey, I can't do all these things, but I'm going to say exactly how you can use your strengths and your weaknesses. I'm going to be in control of that for each individual person and all of their differences. I don't think that should have been how it was handled. I think that what should have happened was the government sponsors like 1,000 different, maybe not 1,000, but you know what I'm talking about. A bunch of different Xavier-like schools to help teach the younger people. Like they had the Young Avengers, but apparently they were just letting them kind of run amok. Like they should not have let the Young Avengers have a TV show. That was ridiculous. But you should have people kind of better monitor, better parent these kids and these younger superheroes, teach them how to use their abilities, teach them the right way to do it, teach them the morals and strengths that they need for this situation. They should be taught and they should be like managed by people similar to them. So that way they know what's going on. That way they understand the responsibility and the gravity of the situations that they are going to be putting themselves and others in. That should have been what happened. I don't think you should have had the government like, hey, you're different, so I'm going to tell you exactly how you can be and exactly how you can exist. I don't think that was okay. Because, like, again, they said the X-Men as they were doing fine, because it's not the X-Men is the problem. It's not necessarily the superheroes that are the problem. It's not the concept of superheroes that's the problem. It's the fact that you have these people who aren't being properly guided throughout the situation. That's my major issue with what was going on, especially because you do see, like, throughout the entire time, anytime you get a scene of I think it was S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that would be, like, kidnapping and grabbing all of these superheroes. They're, like, talking about and calling them freaks, stuff like that. You can see that response. Those people should not be in charge. Those people should not be handling these situations. That was a lot. I had fun, though. It was honestly, if I could suggest reading this comic, I would. I know in the past we discussed, like, iRobot, which was, like, it was good. It wasn't as great as I remember, but it was still good. And Sherlock Holmes, like, it's a good story. I love the character. Would not suggest that book to introduce them to the character, but this comic, I did really appreciate. I will warn you, if you are not familiar with Marvel, if your only experience with Marvel is the movies, you will not understand a lot of the people or a lot of the characters. I did have my boyfriend who was able to just sit there and be like, okay, so this is this person, this is this person, this is this person. I also play a Marvel video game, so that helps with a lot of the characters as well. But I would suggest, if you had time, if you had access to the comic, I would suggest reading it. I personally we have a subscription to Comixology, so that's how I read it. I was able to borrow it, and it's just sitting in my library. It was a good read. It was a good read. A lot of really nice images, a lot of very famous images that, like, if you aren't familiar with like super familiar into comics, but if you've, like, kind of gotten a sense of them, you might see, like, there's a scene where Spider-Man does reveal his secret identity, and even that image I could recognize. It was nice. It was a good time. It was a good story. I liked it. I liked it a lot. But until next time, valedictions, friends. Beep, beep.